Welcome to our HX webinar. This is our Antarctica fireside webinar, and here to tell you all about his most recent journey and all of the wonderful experiences that you can have in Antarctica is the first of our three presenters. I would like to turn it over to Tudor Morgan. So Tudor, over to you.
Hello, Lee, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have a bumper audience. Over 1,200 of you have signed up to join us. So thank you very much for giving us a bit of your time for us to be able to share a bit about Antarctica and how we visit Antarctica as HX. The aim is in this that we give a presentation, a bit of an idea into that, but we'll also go into depth into a recent itinerary that we have just done. I'm really fortunate to be joined today by some great colleagues and friends that I've been working with for many years. Karen Strand, who's our VP of Expedition Development, and Verena Moraldi, who's our Chief Scientist. And as already said, my name is Tudor Morgan. Between us, we've been, I think, to Antarctica more times than we'd like to admit over the years. But that's part of the fun and the love and the draw of Antarctica, that it just keeps on getting us back and back. I think the thing for me is being able, or the thought of never going again fills me with horror. But anyway, we'll crack on. We'll try not to get too sidetracked in this because this is a subject very dear to our hearts. Within HX, we very much feel that we provide the perfect balance of adventure, comfort, and sustainability. These are the sort of main pillars of any voyage we do. And what we mean by that, in terms of adventure, we provide that expedition experience. Our ships are built for expedition, and our teams on board are incredibly skilled and experienced, as well as people like myself who are supporting back in the office. Within the comfort, our ships are incredibly informal. There's a bit of a boutique feel, very Norwegian, Scandinavian design, but really, you will be incredibly comfortable in the range from restaurants, bars, as well as having that platform to really experience Antarctica. In terms of sustainability is really important to us. We are the highest ranking company in our sustainability efforts through ESG, and this is externally validated. And with our hybrid ships, banning of single-use plastics, banning of heavy fuel oil, and our relationships and partnerships, these are areas we're continually working on and continually looking to drive. With all that, we are the leader in Antarctic adventure, with more guests enjoying their trips with us than any other operator. So we very much look forward to welcoming you on board. I'm going to just talk through now the variety of expeditions we offer to Antarctica, because we have so many different trips across our ship. I'm going to brush on the different areas before we sort of concentrate on one particular trip, because if we tried to go through every itinerary in detail, we would probably be here for 4 or 5 hours. So the aim is to sort of do the iconic trips, if you like, where we have these longer trips. All our trips start in southern South America, either Ushuaia or Punta Arenas. The details of all these are on the web, and these are actually screenshots from our web pages. So you've got those the details there to pull into the differences. But we offer a number of different routes, and we have different names for those trips, from longer 16-day trips through to highlights, which are a lot shorter trips, where we're going back and forth from Ushuaia, visiting the delights of the Antarctic Peninsula. And then we also have some trips towards the start and at the end of the season. And again, this will sort of they bookmark the season, where we start in Buenos Aires, visit Puerto Madryn and the Falkland Islands. But people say, why should we go to the Falklands? It is really a jewel in the South Atlantic. It's a wildlife haven. And I know Verena and Karen will definitely agree with me on those. Absolutely stunning. Yeah.
Very underestimated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have these trips before Christmas, where we do the Falklands along with Antarctica as specific trips. I think we're alone amongst our operators to offer Antarctic and Falklands trips.
We are.
With the real highlights. And then with MS Fram, our smaller vessel, we go into the jewel of the crown of the South Atlantic, South Georgia, which I think for those of us that have been, well, all three of us have been there, it is a real highlight, but it is a long voyage. So we do find that people that go there we find people come back and back, but this is kind of the ultimate trip, I would say, a 21, 22-day trip, starting in Chile, Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and Antarctica. So a real incredible journey to take.
Perfect immersion.
Yeah, immersion in all things South Atlantic and Antarctic. And again, at the start and the end of the season with Fram, we have these varieties coming again from Buenos Aires, so sailing further north, so you get a touch of the Argentinian experience, Falkland Islands, and the Antarctic. And again, with similar trip in reverse as we move towards the end of the season. So you can see we have multiple different trips that we really offer, but the trip that we'd like to talk to give an insight just into sort of the day-to-day operations and what you can experience on a trip in Antarctica is one that I've just been lucky to come off. And in fact, I'm still in Argentina with Verena as we're on our way home from this trip, which was absolutely amazing. And in this trip, what we'd like to talk through is just the sort of the day-to-days and the practicalities to give you that insight into what it's like on board from a real trip rather than theory. But having said that, one of the questions that we get, and you'll be asking, is when is the best time to travel to Antarctica? The real answer is whenever you can go, because whenever you go, that will be
it's true.
Yeah, whenever you can go. That's whichever ship you're on, that's the best time. If you are looking for some specific things like penguin chicks, then January and early February is the time. There tends to be more whales later in the season. So there's different opportunities. We only go south of the Antarctic Circle after Christmas because of the ice conditions. So if you're looking for something specific, then this chart is a good guide. But really, the time you go is the best time, or the time you can get to go. It's all incredible. So what I'd like to do then is just, very briefly, I think you're probably all aware because you're in this call, you know us as HX. The ships that we have operating in Antarctica are the sister ships, Roald Amundsen and Nansen, and they both operate from Ushuaia. And MS Fram, I'd say the queen of the fleet, operating from Punta Arenas, and Karen was involved in the building of Fram. She's also godmother of MS Roald Amundsen, so knows our ships, but has spent years and years on Fram, so knows Fram side out.
5 years of my life has been on board that thing.
5 years. How about that? Yeah.
That thing.
That wonderful thing.
Yeah. So in terms of, just to give you an idea, if you haven't sailed on Amundsen and Nansen, this is an idea of the different suite categories. So when you book, obviously there's, again, heaps of information on the web, but just this is what the look and feel of our cabins are like. But as I said, incredibly comfortable. Since the start of this Antarctic season in October, we went all inclusive. So that means your drinks are covered, number of things that are sort of optional extras like kayaking and camping, which we'll talk about a bit later, that are extras, but basically you won't have to dip your hand in your pocket when you're on board now, which makes life easier for you and hopefully everyone else. Then I'd just like to go here, maybe just hand over to Karen to just talk a little bit about our teams and then our activities.
So thank you, Tudor. So we have built our expedition teams over decades now, and put a philosophy down on having continuity and very good knowledge in our teams. So a typical team on Amundsen or Nansen will be between 22 and 25 actually, and on Fram it will be between the 13 to 15. And they range from all kinds of all kinds of uh,
Box of life.
of supplies. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Brain freeze. Um, for what the trip is designed for. So for Antarctica, which we are talking about today, marine biologists, ornithologists, environmental scientists, glaciologists, and historians are kind of the I would say the one that kind of goes along every voyage. It doesn't matter where we are. Historians are important wherever we are. And there are on all trips also professional photographers that will follow the trip and document the trip for you as well. So we have a range of different fields of expertise that we curate for the voyages.
And a very important part of that are the activities we undertake off the ship. Would you like to brush on those, Karen?
Yes. So, and I didn't mention those in the previous slide because they come here. So we also have a number of activity guides that follow the outside on out of the ship activities. That's what they sort of shine. So they together with a lot of the other team members, they join in the small boat cruising because we need a lot of manpower to do that. So they kind of all pitch in there. Hiking and nature treks also more than just the activity guides, but the activity guides tends to lead them. Kayaking as well, that's where they really shine, our activity guides, and they are trained. And we also have extra training for kayaking. Even in kayaking conditions, we actually don't do like wave kayaking, but they can handle it. So it's very important that they have a level that is far above what we actually do for our guests. Snowshoeing is something that we really like, and you can see on the picture is what we like to do on in Antarctica, because conditions are really good for that in Antarctica. And if you want to go, and if you're a snowshoe enthusiast, early season is a good time to go snowshoeing if you want, because we have more variety. There are places we can go all season, but the variety is bigger in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
We go camping. It says ice camping here, but I'm not sure if that's what we call it. But we camp on snow. And we do wildlife tours in the Falklands, for example, and we do community visits in South America when we have a combined South America Antarctic voyage. So yeah, I think that kind of covers it for.
And plenty to be busy, and we'll see as we talk through the presentation that there's you'll see the activities that we do, or we did on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, we didn't put the polar plunge in here though. We have the polar plunge, which is we'll get to that.
Yeah,
we'll get that. Yeah.
And Verena, science and sustainability is a real core part in the education program. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Tudor. It really is important for us to not only support the scientific community. We are offering our 3 vessels operating in Antarctica as platforms of opportunity for researchers who have a difficulty getting a spot on a research vessel, or have trouble getting to their area of field work. So we host them on board. They share the trip with you, and they are throughout the trip available for you to ask questions and experience in person what it takes to collect data in remote areas like Antarctica. This season only, we supported researchers from the institutions that you can see on your screen now. And the image that you see is actually the researcher Heidi Hornen from the Norwegian Polar Institute, who last year dropped sound recorders in the Antarctic with our help. And this year she came back to recover those recorders, extract all the information and redeploy them so that we have information. And this has been done for the very first time this year. So nobody has ever recorded the soundscape of Antarctica or the Bransfield Strait or the Gerlach Strait. So it's super exciting. And you can see the guests were there to hear as the very, very first, the sounds that came out of there. There were humpback whales singing, orcas, a lot of incredible noises.
Really amazing to have the instant results that she shared with us all. Absolutely incredible. It was
really, really nice. Yes.
And then to prepare people before they get on board, what can they do?
Well, this is a first in the industry. We have been collaborating with the University of Tasmania for quite a while now, supporting research projects. But we decided to go one step further into this collaboration. And together with their help, we have developed a course, preparation course, so that our guests are better prepared or pre-educated, if you want, when traveling with us. And these courses, they are more or less 4 hours long. Of course, it can take you a lot longer if you go into detail. There is a lot of content there, but you can do it as quickly or as slowly as you want. And these are the topics that are covered: the history of Antarctica, the governance of Antarctica, the southern oceans, the ice, wildlife, etc., etc. And yes, this is an exclusive for our guests.
And this is we've just started it now at the start of this season. So it's our first year, and the feedback from those that have done it has been absolutely incredible. So we're really motivated now to make version 2, make it even better, and ready for the next Antarctic season. So
already more than 1,600 people have subscribed for it.
Wow. But you get a diploma too, right? I mean, kind of you can hang it on your wall.
With pride. But it's that preparation which is really important. But part of it is also how we get involved in citizen science, how we can engage.
Yes, and for that, we offer a number of citizen science projects on board. And as you know, we do have internet, but it's not always very reliable. So if you want to participate in these programs, we invite you to already prepare yourself by downloading these applications. And our colleague Oli has just shared these QR codes so that you can download those applications.
Brilliant.
It's in the chat.
So on to, we'll just talk through the sailing that both Verona and I were just lucky enough to be on. This is, so these photos that are shared in here are prepared by our onboard photographer. At the end of all our voyages, we provide you with a voyage logbook, which details different aspects of the voyage, but also a portfolio of the photographer's best photos. So we've just taken a snapshot of those in this for this webinar. So they're not my photos, they're not Verona's, but they are from a professional who, when you join with us, you will get to not only get a share of their photos, but also talk to about how to improve your photo techniques and their tips and tricks. So this voyage, as I said, this is one of many itineraries that we do. But many of our voyages on Amundsen and Nansen start in Ushuaia. This is the southernmost city in the world, in Tierra del Fuego, southern tip of Argentina. And it has this incredible alpine scenery as the backdrop to the city, and also these incredible forests. So you have this north of Vegas forests as we sail out of the Chilean fjords. And one of the things I love about this as we prepare and we build up for Antarctica, we're not only sailing in these incredibly historic waters, but you can really see the formation of the land. And as we go to the Antarctic Peninsula, you can imagine these basins full of glaciers, etc. And the glaciers are still flowing to the sea. So it's very much part of the journey. You'll notice in all the slides that I'm showing, there's a little map in the top right-hand corner, and that pinpoints where the ship was when on this day, or when the photo was taken. On this actual voyage, we know these are expeditions. The forecast was absolutely horrendous, so we actually did leave Ushuaia a bit late. And then you can see the snow on the mountains. Midsummer in Tierra del Fuego, we had some fresh dusting of snow. So we did leave a little bit late, but that enabled us to get a consistent speed across the infamous Drake Passage, which can be the Drake Lake or the Drake Shake. Our ships are all fitted with stabilizers for comfort. And as part of crossing the Drake, we use that time very wisely for the science and education program, but also introductions to the team, preparation for the voyage in terms of making sure our compliance with IATO, briefings, biosecurity, making sure your equipment and kit is right, and in terms of a few lectures, etc., to prepare you. And of course, introduction to our ship's team, our captains, which have years of experience. Although Captain Runa here does have years of experience, but he still looks very young. But that's maybe because I'm getting older. Yeah, very much part of the preparation. And as part of that, one of the incredible things is the wildlife. Verena, maybe you'd like to just talk us through about what we do out on deck during the crossings.
Yeah, well, when we are on the crossings, we invite our guests to join us for what we call deck watches. And we have our ornithologists and marine scientists looking out for whatever is around the ship, which on the Drake is very often a wide variety of seabirds. And getting closer to Antarctica, we start seeing the first penguins purposing around the ship. So very, very exciting to see birds. There are not many species, but in wide abundance. And marine mammals, we also start seeing getting closer to the peninsula.
And as you notice, sorry, I didn't mean to just go forward. You'll notice as this is a south of the Antarctic Circle sailing, we went a long way south first, hence the time at sea. The Drake Passage itself is usually 2 days. So this trip was just as we were going further south. But as we go further south, Karen, we've done this trip together many times.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about our cruising, and that this day was a bit overcast. Nice introduction to what we did, but tell us a bit about our cruising.
So the small boat cruising kind of typically is opportunistic. We look at the weather forecast, and then we find the best possible location for that day. And what we're looking for is to find a place where there is less wind, and where we also anticipate there is ice, because ice is nice. And that means that we have a lot of the ice scape around us is part of the journey. And where there is also sea ice and so forth, there is also normally wildlife on sea ice. So hauling out seals and so forth, and even birds is quite common. So we typically on a day like this, when we move down to Crystal Sound, which you take 2.5 to 3 days to get there, you go into these enclosed areas and you start looking for those ice scapes. And then we lower our boats, and you are divided into groups, and you then are being called out for an hour or so cruising experience. And typically that is enough, because you are sitting still, so you start to get cold ish. And you see a lot within that hour. And if you go over 10 minutes, that's also because if we find something very exciting, we'll show you.
And that's that experience off the ship on a on a small boat, it just gives a whole different perspective. And
Very.
and when you're on the ship, you think the ship is massive, and you go away for a few minutes from the boat, and you look back, and you realize that you're really in this remote place, and where you are, and the scale. The scale of Antarctica is so hard, isn't it, to tell?
And it's even tough from that perspective of the ship, because you're pretty high up. But then when you come that close to the waterline, and I think that's what kind of astonished us every time, is that even now, after all these times we've done this, that feeling when you put your foot on that zodiac and you start going towards that iceberg or that ice cape, as I said, it does something to you. There is a very, very, very different feeling. You feel like you're in the element, on the element.
Yeah, and I know this trip, and I know what's coming, but we saw lots of icebergs, and we did a lot of cruising around icebergs. But the sculptures and the shapes and the different light on the face of the icebergs, and bearing in mind at least 7/8 of an iceberg is underwater. Just the scale, it just blows us away. Anyway, moving on. So we sailed further south, and here we landed at a place called Red Rock Ridge, which is a long way south. Do you want to tell us a bit about this penguin colony, Verena?
Yes, it is an Adelie penguin colony. It's one of the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, in the area that we go to. So a great opportunity to see adults, chicks going and coming and going. And by the time you got there, because I joined the trip a bit later, you'll hear about that.
Special guest,
By the time you were there, I suppose the chicks were already quite developed.
Yeah.
This is January. So yes, it's amazing to see the interaction of parents taking turns to go get food on the sea to feed the chicks.
So on our, another question we have is, because our ships, we take 400 and 450 guests maybe when they're full. The question is, the regulations in Antarctica, we're only allowed 100 people ashore at any one time. So everybody's given a boat group, and we rotate people around, so everybody gets a chance to go ashore. Commonly, we will be doing something else at the same time. People will be kayaking, maybe we'll be doing small boat cruising at the same time. We'll have lectures going on board. So you are kept pretty busy. You choose what you want to do as well, but there is busy, and that's part of the in-depth immersion and opportunities that we have on these bigger vessels. The next day we moved up to an area called Blind Bay, which actually took us up into an area that was uncharted. We had the sonar out, and we did some more small boat cruising. But then we also went into an area of fast ice, which is very, very special in itself. And we actually didn't. This ice was a little bit rotten, but a bit later in the day, we sailed past another bit which we thought was really quite stable. So in fact, after dinner, when everybody was relaxing and maybe had a glass of wine, we stopped the ship and we gave everybody the opportunity to walk on water. How does that feel, Karen? You're a master of water walking.
Yeah, you and I have been developing that together. No, it's fantastic, and you can start with this, and then you have these flows, they move, so it means that you have like maybe half a knot or up to a knot speed on these things. So they might be there for the beginning, and then group 2 are a little bit further south maybe. But it's glorious. It's very it's a one of a kind feeling, and I think I can't really explain it without really saying that it's a 3-dimensional thing. You just really have to experience this. So I mean, guys, just book, get on with it, because if you want this feeling, all right, this is it.
and doing a sea ice walk, in terms of timing, at the start of the season, we can kind of do it further north. As the season progresses,
It's
the
only,
quality of the
yes.
ice, we do it a bit further south. So
Yeah.
Or east,
yes, or east,
Yeah.
on the eastern side of the peninsula where it's
Yeah.
a little bit colder.
Mm.
The other fun thing we do is polar plunge. We do that in two different ways now, either from a beach where you walk in, but we also do it from the ship. So this is actually the sea ice behind, and I think on this trip, I think
How many?
almost a third of guests did this, and
Ooh.
there was a lot of cheering, and the hot tubs were put in good use, and the sauna afterwards. One of our big bosses was on board. He did it, and he persuaded the captain to go in as well, which the captain
In
was not
his
happy about.
uniform.
He,
Yeah.
he claimed
His uniform.
he claimed he had no bathing trunks. So the big boss said, "Well, in you get."
Crazy.
And so he went in with his uniform, no
Oh.
excuse. But that was it's a fun experience, and if you're not into it, then it's a good spectator sport as well.
But
I think
just to say that we are very careful on where we plan to do this, because you can
Yes.
see the ice at the edge there. You have to be very careful that you don't have brush ice around where we do this, because they are quite sharp on your skin, and you could bleed. So we are really careful that it's purely just water right around you when you do this, just so you know how much we
as in
safety
all our
safety
things,
safety
safety is
safety
a very important piece.
safety safety
Yeah.
safety.
The next day we went a little bit further south again, but we went to a historic site and monument called Stonington Island. Here there's an old British base from the 40s and an old US base from 1939. These have been abandoned now, and they're historic sites. In fact, the glacier that you see behind at one time was connected to the island, and they didn't realize it was an island. But this was the main access way for early surveying work of the Antarctic Peninsula.
But Tudor, wouldn't you say that now these stations are like walking museums?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And they're sort of time warps into a bygone age, which is not that long ago, but in Antarctic history, it's an age. So visiting this type of place really brings together the sort of human endeavor and that people have worked here in the past. So a great place. And then also during that visit, we were doing the landing and also some cruising, some great crab eater seals, which are living amongst the sea ice, one of the most numerous seal populations in the world. I think estimated population around 20 million or so. Is that right, Farina? Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of controversy, but
nobody really knows because they live in the ice. We started heading our way further north, and again we came across these incredible ice scapes. So actually, this was plan B, because the ice was so good that we just stopped the ship and did some cruising, small boat cruising, giving everybody plenty of time out with these. This was the most photographed iceberg of the day. Absolutely stunning, breathtaking. Really magic.
And this button doesn't give you a dimension of the arc, but it was almost as tall as the ship.
It was bigger than the ship. Yeah.
Huge.
It's funny this, because I mean, in all the years, been going up and down there, but Martha Strait and Crystal Sound has been the areas where we've seen most of these varied ice scapes. It's kind of interesting to just kind of reflect a little bit on that, because they there's a lot of great ice in the Weddell Sea as well, but this variety that we see in Crystal Sound and Martha Strait and a little bit further south is quite extraordinary. It's something I've started to think about, actually.
And I think we're all aware of climate change, and as part of that, we have seen a breakup of ice shelves, and as they've broken up, particularly in the south, we see more icebergs. Of course, the icebergs are frozen fresh water, which is when eventually they melt, it will increase sea level. But also sitting on sea ice, which is frozen salt water, of course, the habitat of seals. So again, here, whilst we were on the small boats, seeing crab eater seals, but also a little pup, as you can see there. It's always always very cute to see. We sometimes get criticized, I don't know why, that all our pictures that we share of amazing blue skies. Please note this is day 10 and this is the first blue sky. But we had amazing time. Again, at Peterman Island, we did some a landing at a big penguin colony where there's gentoo penguins, nice icescapes as well. But we also, ahead of us here, you can see to the north, this incredible, you can just pick out this, well, maybe center of the picture, there's a small channel called Le Maire Channel, which after the day's activities, we sailed through. And then this is looking back with the incredible light to the south. So yes, stunning light and gorgeous, incredible views and scenic navigation through the passages. As Verena mentioned, she joined the trip later, and part of that was we were fortunate enough, and it's you can never kind of plan it, but it did happen where we joined our sister ship. Very briefly, and we took Verena off Nansen and brought her onto Almonton to work with some more of our science collaborators. But it's always a special moment, I think, in any fleet when you meet your sister ship, and of course also a photo opportunity. Always for the mariners. But one of the real highlights that we all love, and we haven't had too many pictures of close-ups, but it's the penguin. What's going on here, Verena?
Here we see probably a change in shift, taking care of the two little chicks that are sitting there. That is probably daddy or mommy coming back. They will sit around for a little while, recognize each other, and then the other parent will finally go back to sea and get some food for himself first, and then bring back for the babies again.
And gentoo penguin, going to a penguin colony, you have to get used to the smell. But what
it's an acquired
hilarious things I find with the gentoo penguins is watching them. But they love stones, and they build their nest of stones so the nest is the egg is protected and to keep the chicks warm, etc., etc. But they're kleptomaniacs. They just steal stones off each other the whole time, and they continue doing that. And not only when they do this change, as Verena was saying, but they will steal a stone from somebody else's nest and bring it back to their partner. Yeah. They're absolutely comical. And you think, why are they doing that? But it's, hello, darling, here's a stone. Thank you very much.
Just these chicks, they look only a few weeks old. And we're talking about, what was it, mid
22nd of January.
There you go, 22nd of January. So, yeah.
And that does vary depending on the season, how much snow there'd been in the winter, the level of sea ice, the availability of food. But it's a good guide if you want to see penguin chicks, mid-late January, early February.
Because they start to breed in around Christmas time, if the snow isn't, because they do not put their eggs on snow unless you're an inexperienced breeder. But they need bare ground.
And stones.
And stones, stones they find.
Then, as well as the landings, the small boat cruisings, kayaking is super popular. And on this trip, again, it's a sign-up activity. It's a paid-for activity, but we have top-of-the-range equipment. On this trip, we had 400 guests, and we took 225 people wanted to go kayaking, and we took 225 people kayaking. But Karen, do you want to briefly just say a bit about this? This was off Danko Island in the Arera Channel.
This is off Danko in the Arera, So we also this again opportunistic based on weather. We want the kind of weather you see there, not a lot of waves, and because we want this to be an enjoyable experience. And a lot of our guests have not even set their foot in a kayak before. So starting in this kind of environment is a big leap for many of our guests, but they really enjoy it. And we have guides that are super good at prepping you and making you comfortable in doing it. This is a typical 1.5 to 2 hours in the kayak experience, where you are then you're launched then from a Zodiac. You go in and you have dry suits on, and we put a lot of time and effort in gear. We are quite a few gearheads in Höstruten, and we use a lot of our time researching, looking at the best, developing it year by year, so that we always are at the top end and do not fall behind on what is out there and what is also environmentally friendly, because a lot of this has in the past been quite environmentally enemy like. So we also are looking at that and maintaining it properly and so forth. So this experience is incredibly, because you do not hear a sound except for your own breathing and the paddles in the water, and or maybe a guide that are asking you to
Behave. Yeah.
or guiding you. No, mostly guiding you in the right direction, because this is supposed to be a joyful experience for everyone. And
in fact, this trip I also went kayaking, and I went with
oh, you
somebody
did?
that was skeptical about kayaking. I said, right, come on, let's go. Within 15 minutes, they said, this is magical. I totally
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, moving on.
Tranquil.
And again, with that
Cape
mix of
Petrel.
ice and water, incredible, beautiful wildlife, the Cape Pigeon or Cape Petrel really stands out, or Pintado,
Yes.
sailors different names. And again, as we move slightly further north, the ice scapes absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And then, as we mentioned, when things aren't happening off the ship, then there's plenty going on the ship. But this is results from we do daily science boats.
Yes, that is something that we haven't touched yet. Not only we take you out on cruising, but we dedicate one of the boats to take out a few of our guests to help collect samples and oceanographic data that we share with the scientific community. So this is one session in the Science Center after the science boat, where we are analyzing the water sample that we collected. And as you can see, people are really happy to participate in this kind of sessions and to discover the microscopic world in the water and identify the different species of diatoms, for example, that we get to collect. So it's really magical.
Yeah. And then further north, a popular place, but that we sometimes go to, is Deception Island, an active volcano that we sail into the caldera. Magical colors, very different, relatively devoid of wildlife, but a whole different experience, which is incredible. Again, an old whaling station, which is a sort of that historic timepiece of where we were exploiting the whales as a resource, or the resource of the ocean. But all things sort of come to an end, and we have to head north. But again, heading north across the Drake is a real time for reflection, for birds, for actually going through what you've just experienced, because it is a really powerful time and experience, that travel and time, and also just processing that trip is, I think, a really important time. And as we cross the Drake, we end up coming back into back into the Beagle Channel and head back to Ushuaia. So that was our trip. As you see, we finished at the end of January. Really cool. And hopefully through telling the story of that Antarctic trip, it gives you an idea of what we do on a day-to-day basis. As we said at the start, this is one of many itineraries that we go and we do, including itineraries with South Georgia and the Falkland Islands, shorter itineraries on the peninsula. They are all magical and amazing. So really have a, what fits best for you is going to be the trip to go on.
Absolutely.
We have incredible guest feedback.
Yeah.
Having said all that, before we go to questions, now there's never been a better time to book, I've been told by our commercial teams. We do currently have an offer which is 15% off, which is there for our trips in 2025 and 26. Our loyalty program, which is very popular, HX Explorers. If you are an existing member, then there's an extra 5%, and if you are a level 2 member, which means you've already done some trips with us, then you can get up to 10% off. So the message there is if you're going to sail with us, it's well worth joining the loyalty program, because you never know what's around the corner, and you'll want to come back to Antarctica and go to South Georgia. So why not?
Oh, yes.
Opportunity to get more percentage off.
Yes.
For the loyalty program, those offers are there up till the 28th of February. So those are busy. Another question we get is about solo supplements. Then those supplements are available as low as 45%. Sometimes that will change depending on availability of cabins, but at the moment there are solo supplement offers as low as 45%. And if you do have questions, of course, you've got our details from somewhere, because we contacted you and invited you to the webinar. Then please do reach out to your preferred travel agent or one of our call centers. The details for our call centers are here. But I'm going to give the floor over to you. In fact, I'm going to give it over to Jesse. To our master of questions, because he's one of the people, Jesse and Olga in the background, have been fielding all your questions. So over to you, Jesse.
Thank you, Tudor. Hello, everyone. I'm Jesse, as you may have heard, coming to you from our customer service hub in Tallinn, Estonia. So lots of good questions today and lots of really cool topics covered. My first question, though, is, Tudor, you've actually just mentioned it briefly. It's almost deserving of its own webinar. Or, no, not almost, it is. But we did focus largely on a singular itinerary that really encompasses a lot of what Antarctica has to offer. But Antarctica has even more to offer than that, which so we do have the itineraries to the Falklands and South Georgia. Could you touch just briefly on what they could expect to experience there that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, the Falklands itineraries, really, we tend to, on all our itineraries in the Falklands, if we can, we spend 3 days in the Falklands, and we mix that with visits into the outer islands, which are wildlife havens, and it very much based around wildlife and the scenery, and then mix that with a visit to Stanley, the capital of the Falkland Islands, where we offer some town packages, some excursions, but also that ability to visit Stanley and the history of this sort of island very near Cape Horn. It's got an incredible history in itself. So the Falklands, incredible 3 days there. And then South Georgia, we spend 4.5, maybe 5 days, depending on the conditions in South Georgia, which again is, there's a real mixture, I would say. And the Antarctic Peninsula stands out in itself, but South Georgia is like the Alps on steroids sticking out of the sea, mixed with
the Serengeti.
With incredible wildlife. With that, there's very much this incredible history, whaling history. So South Georgia, you get king penguins, which you don't get on the Antarctic Peninsula. So there's a real, I think, for people really into photography, really into wildlife
and history,
then South Georgia is a really big thing. It is a longer voyage, as we said, so you do get that mix. We highlighted the South of the Circle voyage, where you get more of the, it's a longer time in Antarctica, and those icescapes. The shorter trips in Antarctica, you get that sort of northern portion of the itinerary. You're unlikely to go south of the Antarctic Circle on a normal Antarctic sailing.
And I think there is one historical aspect about South Georgia, which I think is when you travel now and onwards, is that you get the whaling history that kind of, I wouldn't say broke South Georgia, but which changed its completely its biodiversity, because we as humans were exploiting it. To coming now and looking maybe 10, 15 years back, where all the big eradication programs of unwanted species and introduced species kicked in, and now seeing how South Georgia is recovering to its natural state with its
Center.
fauna and flora, just the South Georgia pipit, for example, that we never ever saw before. The reindeers are gone, the rats are gone, all of that kind of is encompassing now, and it's happening now. So it means that you really are traveling to South Georgia in a time of almost rebirth, so to speak. So it's
And I think,
really,
So you need to get there now.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be, yeah, now, or in the next years to come. I mean,
Yes.
it's such, I mean, I see such a difference from the first years when I started to travel there over 22 years ago to now, tussock grass, big, all of that. It's really exciting. Don't get me started. Yeah.
and one of the, you know, maybe I brushed on, but I maybe didn't show any pictures of any whales. You know, the whaling history of South Georgia is
Yeah.
kind of, I find it quite daunting, and it sort of puts hairs on the back of your neck just thinking about this, the mass killing of whales. But one of the things is the recovery of whales now is incredible. You know, we see humpback whales on a daily basis, I would say, minke whales, occasional blue whales, orcas. So the whale populations have rebounded, and they're some of the species are slower. But in fact,
like
we
southern right whale.
saw southern right whales in Antarctica, which I hadn't seen before a few weeks ago.
Never.
So that was, that was pretty special.
And whales in South Georgia, you can go 10 years back and we hardly saw. We always had to go to Antarctica to kind of see them. Now they are recovering quite well.
The point that we are now supporting a project trying to determine if we don't need to go slower around South Georgia to protect whales. So yes,
it's
fantastic,
exciting time to go.
Oh yes. And I presume some of our citizen science projects help contribute to those types of studies. And
yes, happy whale, for example.
Nice, excellent. So thank you for that very elaborate answer and in depth.
Sorry.
No, that was perfect.
Don't
That's
get
great.
us started.
No,
you know.
Well, that's a big ask. So on the tails of that a little bit, there's a lot of interest in Volunteer Point and also current update on the avian flu situation. Not just in around Volunteer Point, just in the area at large.
In general.
Yeah. So currently, highly pathogenic avian influenza or avian flu, bird flu, has been going around the world. I think Australia is the only continent. Australasia is the only continent that hasn't got it. So our biosecurity measures across the industry for everyone have been heightened. So everywhere, making sure we're 100% clean. Currently we don't allow any. Again, this is the whole industry. Any sitting down in places. Originally, a couple of years ago, we thought the penguin colonies would be absolutely decimated. Fortunately, fingers crossed, we haven't seen that. We are seeing mortality in particularly things like skuas, but also seal pups. So every landing we do, we monitor the site first. If there's signs of mortality, then that is reported through IATO, the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators, to the scientific community. And some sites in Antarctica, currently I think there's 8 sites that are closed over the whole peninsula. So it's not having an impact on our itineraries. Volunteer Point is a king penguin colony in the Falklands, which is done as an excursion that can be done when you visit Stanley. Currently that is closed because of some mortality with birds there. And that's a call of the Falkland Islands government, and quite rightly, in terms of protecting species. So that currently is still closed. All these sites are being monitored, and in fact, some sites in Antarctica that were closed earlier in the season are now reopened. So it's a continual process of monitoring and evaluation.
Okay, very good, very informative. So moving on to other topics, folks at home, I am generalizing trends on the questions. I'm not going to be able to ask each individual question. We are actually, technically we're out of time, but I'm gonna ignore that. How would you compare crossing the Drake Passage to crossing the North Sea? And do you have any tips for managing a rough crossing?
Yeah. I first to say, to recognize seasickness is horrible, and that feeling of seasickness, fingers crossed, touch wood, I don't get too seasick myself, but I know it is absolutely horrible. Being prepared, and the captain and the expedition leader will say, we're going out into open water. It takes some precautions now.
Take it. Yeah.
So,
before you need it.
If you
take
are
it before you need it.
take it before you need it. Herbal remedies, ginger, crystallized ginger, ginger tea, all those things, wristbands help. I would say the ships generally are pretty stable and their movement is pretty calm, but you do get the Drake shake. Comparisons with other areas of open water, whether it's Denmark Strait, the North Sea, all big bodies of water can be pretty rough, and they can also be flat calm. So I would say in terms of comparison, then the big comparison for me would be the size. It is bigger, the Drake Passage. It is generally a 2-day.
It's longer.
crossing.
Yeah, it's a longer.
It's longer. It's a longer crossing. But I was going to say, we now, and as I mentioned on the trip, we do monitor the weather very carefully. So that trip we were just on, we left port, I think
6 hours.
I think about 10 hours later.
Oh, 10 hours.
To avoid the weather.
Yeah.
So we monitor the weather a lot more. I say dangerous to say, but more than we ever used to really try and avoid those rough seas and try and make it as smooth and as comfortable for all our guests. But it's very, I'll get shot down in flames. It's not that bad.
But it's not. It's not.
No,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
story too. The important thing is not to be on an empty stomach, whatever the situation.
That's true.
Not be on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
And the difference between the North Sea and the Drake Passage, I would take the Drake Passage any day to the North Sea, to be honest. I mean, because the North Sea is extremely shallow. It's extremely shallow. So we have to be even more careful when we leave port, and maybe stay in port longer, because the North Sea have very, very high, but they are also very pointy waves, because you only have an average depth of 144 meters through the whole North Sea. The Southern Ocean, and when we cross the Drake Passage, thousands of meters below you. So the waves are longer, I would say longer and rounder in shape. So it means that you don't get this really abrupt ups and downs on most
get the big
cases.
peaks and troughs.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Not in that. So to the difference between the two, that's the difference between the two.
Sorry, guys. Can you still hear me? I've seemed to have frozen.
Yes, you're frozen.
Okay, yeah. I can't do anything, but I can hear you and you can hear me, and that's a good thing. So, from memory, there were two good questions I'd like to ask. One, can we talk about the Penguin Post Office in Port Lockroy? Also, just in case I lose you, any news about the A23A iceberg?
Okay.
Yeah. Tudor, you take the Penguin Post Office.
Yeah. So Penguin Post Office is it's a historic site and monument, Port Lockroy, on Goodyear Island. And on some visits, we visit it with Fram. There are number limitations because it is a very small island. But we also get the team from the Heritage Trust sometimes on board to talk about their work. And as part of that is the ability of, clues in the name, Penguin Post Office, to be able to send a postcard or a mail from Port Lockroy. So we occasionally go, not on all itineraries, again, depending on conditions, depending on itinerary and how it fits. So it's not something we promise, but we do occasionally go there. And then onto A23. And again, particularly, I think in the UK press, it's come out that it's crash into South Georgia and knock South Georgia over, which is maybe a little bit of an exaggeration.
It's going to be grounded before that.
Yeah, there is concern, and it has happened elsewhere in Antarctica, where a big iceberg has blocked the sort of access way in and out for animals, for wildlife, where it's grounded. The current trajectory, it is heading towards South Georgia, but it will ground a long time before it hits South Georgia. But it may have effect on the flow of ecosystems. These icebergs, I've forgotten, it's over 80 miles long, isn't it?
Yeah, but remember, this happened also last year, the exact same situation with an exact almost as big as this one. And
exactly.
Okay.
This one is now 278 kilometers away from South Georgia at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Are there any of our itineraries that might spot them?
Yes, from South Georgia. When they're leaving South Georgia on their way to Antarctica, they have for the last few trips done a detour over to have a look. And they kind of put their track through to be able to see it. Yeah, I saw it. I saw it in December when we were there. I was on Fram then. So
well, now you're just bragging.
We sailed. Of course. I mean, that's my prerogative, mister.
That's why we do this job.
That's why we're here.
Okay.
Oops, look like we might have lost him. We wondered if
I'll try and deputize here. So,
thank you, Ollie.
Jesse seems to be having some issues, but I think that there's just a couple of questions outstanding. So one of the questions was just around how busy are the days, and from the first time you leave the ship to when you get back, what does a typical day look like? Can you kind of we've gone through the day by day, but maybe Tudor, if you could explain.
Food is an important part of any expedition. So I would say, meal times are a key part, but it tends to be a physical off-ship activity in the morning and in the afternoon. And within that, then lectures, workshops, so a lot going on. So the day, and I say, you can pick and choose. The day can be as busy as you want it to be, to as relaxed as you want it to be. Some people skip lectures, catch up in their cabin on their TV, because all the lectures are streamed and stored, so you can watch them at any time at your leisure. So it's really, we try and have a busy program on purpose, but also so you can pick and choose and make the most of what you want. So it's kind of up to you. There's a lot going on in the program.
Yeah. And linked to that, there's a couple of questions around kayaking. Maybe Karen, you could help. Can you kayak if you're a non-swimmer, and are they solo or shared? And if you're a solo passenger, how does that work in terms of do you get paired up?
You need to be a swimmer. You need to be having basic swimming skills to do this. We are in a very hostile environment for a human being who like 23 something in the water, and this is around 0 Celsius. So swimming, basic swimming abilities are required. And if you're a solo traveler, we pair you up with one of your wonderful other guests to do that kayaking in a tandem kayak. So and we make sure that you're friends or friendly before you hop into the kayak together with your mate.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we're over time, and I think we've covered all the questions. So just remains to say thank you all so much for joining the webinar today. It's very much appreciated. And thank you to you three superstars for talking through this fantastic destination. Very much appreciated by all, I'm sure. And if people wouldn't mind leaving a little bit of feedback, there should be a little pop-up that comes up on the screen for you at the end here. So thank you guys again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
smoke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hope to see you on board.
Thanks again, everyone. And this will conclude our webinar.